Thanks for coming today to today's webinar, Dashboard Best Practices, brought to you by Yellowfin. We'll be covering today some general best practices around building and planning dashboards for our users and some context around how dashboards can be used in organizations, so in terms of users and roles, etc. And as a research VP at Gartner, Andreas Bitterer says, BI is not there to let you know, it is there to let you act. So we'll do our best to help you in that regard. Joining me today is Cameron Deed, a consultant from our services division, who will be walking you through today's best practices webinar. And I am doing the intro. I'm in Seattle, a senior consultant. And what we hope today is to perhaps give you some insight as to what we've learned over the years in developing dashboards. So firstly, most obviously, the term dashboard is mainly derived from cars, as you can see. And in the early days of dashboard development, it was more report-centric. A typical scenario would be users will be accessing a full list of reports, and opening up each report to find data that they were interested in and the data that they actually needed. Now, for the majority of users, this wasn't actually the right model over time, as they wanted to open something that would sort of give them more indication as to where they're going, the metrics and the SLAs that they needed, and also the direction of the business and a few other things as well. Now, in thinking of some of that factors in terms of dashboard design and also thinking about a car metaphor, the question would be, in a common theme, what would be appropriate in this sense? What do people need to know? What is the placement and presentation of the information at hand? So just looking at this car dashboard here, you can see there's a struggle between, or well, I would say a balance between two different metrics, which is speed and revolution, and everything else, lying on the wayside, like temperature and the rest. So again, bringing about the question of what is more important to show, which comes first, and how do I dictate the size of the placements and where? There are actually two types of BI users in terms of context to the dashboard. So really asking about who are the people who really use dashboards. Fundamentally, there are two types of users. So the first being the data analyst, people who basically analyze data for and by the individual. So these are people who work with information to find solutions to problems. They explore data. They look to find new insight into information. But the reality is, in this case, the dashboard is usually not that critical. But for the BI consumer, on the other hand, these are the people who are in the segment that we're targeting. What they're usually looking for is mass productionized dashboards with predefined analysis. So these are two very different groups, and even though when I say mass productionized, I don't really mean non-personalized. So we still want dashboards who are created, or I would say which are created, for the right people who have access to the right content. So just thinking about these two different groups again, you want to think also about the different models and approaches to show and consume information for these two types of users. And when really thinking about the dashboards and how they're all rolled out, fundamentally, 90% of these cases, they're actually built for the BI consumer. Moving on to the BI for the BI consumer, and thinking of things from their perspective. So the dashboards are usually not specifically an analyst toolset. The analyst is more concerned with the construction and exploration of information rather than building something that's long-lasting. In our opinion, a dashboard is something that's a bit more long-lasting and remains relevant to the user over a long period of time, so it can actually keep returning to the dashboard for their information. So what's really key in this scenario is that what the business user actually wants? Is that what they actually need? And in moving on from that point of view, really thinking about how information is consumed, how information is used, and how it's shared within the organization itself. And with that, feeding into the presentation and development of such dashboards at the end. And once the entire process is over, we also need to tap into the usage models of the organization itself, thinking about what is used, how they're used, and who will be using it, and what they're trying to achieve. And that last bit is actually the most important bit. How can they actually act, and can they actually act on the information retrieved? So why dashboards? Ultimately, why embark on a process to create them? Well, in the simplest sense, it is actually to help people to do their jobs. It is easier than opening a dozen reports to find out exactly what you need. And it is eventually a summarized view of the user's world, basically accessing the data that they need, the data that they can actually access. And ultimately, a simpler way to consume data. And I would actually say the whole idea behind dashboards is to actually make data consumption easier. And that's the goal, and that's the whole point that we're going to drive throughout this entire webinar. It is also the theme that we'll be returning to frequently, you'll probably notice. The question being, are we actually making data easier to consume? Will the users actually use it regularly? And ultimately, will it help them achieve what they need to know? So in today's session, this is not what we're trying to build. That's just an example of a terrible dashboard. What we're trying to do today is to think of use cases, ways of making data simple and relevant in a dashboard, and then really trying to build and develop dashboards that tell you what you need to know and when you need to know it. Other things we'll also talk about and hopefully get you thinking about is how many reports should go in a dashboard tab, how many tabs there should be, how much can people actually consume efficiently at a single time, all very, very relevant points to think about. But enough of me talking. For now, I'll now hand over to Cam, who will take you through the best practice webinar.
Thank you, Ivan. So I'll now start to discuss some of the best practices around designing and planning your dashboards. So when getting started with your dashboard design, a common approach is to jump straight into building the content. But what we see is without a clear vision, dashboards can start to lose their purpose and then start to lose their value. Showing our kind of first example, this is what you'll be able to see on the right-hand side of the screen is a cockpit image. From what we can automatically see that there's a lot of information being presented, there's a lot of different buttons, different switches. For someone who's not familiar with this, it's difficult to know where to start. And if this was a dashboard, it would be very difficult to use. So what you really want is you want your dashboards to be easy. For the first-time users that come in, they want to be able to pick up the concepts and be able to roll with the dashboard and find some useful information. So first of all, for your design, you need to determine if the dashboard is operational or analytical. Operational dashboards typically provide up-to-the-minute information, so this could be a store manager and he wants to see the daily information of what's been happening part of his store, how can he improve certain aspects of his business. Whereas analytical dashboards, you can explore the data in a lot more detail. You can find correlations within the data and really answer those how and why strategic questions. Now that you know what type of dashboard you're looking for, it's always good to have a specific subject area in mind so that you're really uniting common information and presenting that common information in the one location. So examples would be if you're looking to build customer dashboards, you may break it in customer data into a few different sections. One dashboard may be looking at retention. If you were looking at sales, you may then break a dashboard out for regional sales. So being more specific will allow you to really target the dashboard to answering those questions. And this all boils down to providing information that allow users to really act on their data. So once they have the information, they can really move forward and start to make their decisions. Best practice number 2 is around ensuring high data consistency and quality. And this comic summarizes the scenario quite well, that it's useful to have a dashboard, but if the data being presented is not accurate, then the dashboard starts to lose its value. Once consumers realize that the data is not accurate, they will start to lose trust in what they're seeing, and they may start to stop using the dashboard and stop utilizing the dashboard as part of their decision making. An even worse scenario is that they will then continue to use the dashboard and they'll start to use the dashboard for their decisions. So they'll be making their decisions with incomplete information. Best practice number 3 covers planning your dashboard and ensuring that it is relevant. So first of all, to design a powerful dashboard, you need to understand your target audience. This will really allow you to tailor each of your dashboards to a particular group, and each group will have their own specific data that you'll be able to acquire, and also they'll have their own needs and wants. So if you can really align their data and their needs, then you'll start to have a powerful solution. As an example, if you were building a customer dashboard, if you're missing key information like customer name, other key like metrics such as customer totals, then you have the data available to you, but the needs and the questions that the people will be asking won't be satisfied. So you really need to make sure that with the data available, you really need to cover those needs. Also, you want to identify the key metrics for that particular audience. So for a sales dashboard, you may be looking at invoices. For human resources, you may be looking at salary and also retention rates. So the next big question is, how could you start this design process? So what I have on screen here is, and quite underrated but powerful approach, is to really sketch out this design with good old-fashioned pen and paper. And this is a pretty entertaining sketch. One of our past customers has drawn it, and it's something that really allows you to compare your ideas in terms of what you want in a dashboard with the end vision of, can it deliver the information we need. The next best practice number 4, is around displaying important metrics through your KPIs. So for you, if you're not familiar with KPIs, KPIs provide a fast, easily digestible information on areas that matter the most. So this is typically for managers or executives who from a quick glance will know the overall health of their company, their department, or maybe their sector. Now to give you an example of this, I'll show you one of our dashboards within Yellowfin, and this is an example of how you can present KPIs in a clean and simple display. So the top report that we can see is more of a detailed KPI, so we can see that this is focusing in purely on invoice. So this is dedicated to invoice, looking at invoice KPI. We can see the trending over time. We can see some summaries around, are we meeting our targets, and also some different breakdowns of what's happening within the data. So if you've got really important metrics, you may want to build one of these for your most important metrics. If you've got a lot of different KPIs, then a common approach is to build a line for each KPI metric. So we can see here our profit margin, we can see the trend over time, we can see the actual performance against our target, and then we can start to see the variances. So we can see if we're above or below our targets. The next section will start to look into usage and usability of the dashboards themselves. So starting with the big picture, a common pitfall that clients fall into is that they get too excited. They identify 25 to 30 key metrics, but they don't know how to get started. They don't know the next step to move forward. So the users should know straight away from once the dashboard's built, once they're looking and using the dashboard, they should be able to inspect the dashboard and be able to figure out the primary questions that it answers and also be able to see its purpose. So it should be containing some high-level summaries and also try to avoid information cramming. Finally, you will need to ask yourself, does the dashboard answer the core what and why questions? So try to avoid quite large reports on your dashboard tab. It's actually quite a common scenario that someone who's not familiar with dashboards, when they first try to build one, they may just drag across quite a large table. So really try to avoid long, large tables that would prevent quick and easy reading. So to solve this, we would typically use drill-through reports that can link our summary level information across to our detailed reports. So you may see a particular year and you may click on that year, and then it will take you to a detailed report which will break down that information. Best practice number 6 is around interactivity, and dashboards should be interactive. So BI has evolved as technology has evolved to be a more interactive experience, and users want to be able to use the interactive features such as your drill downs, your drill throughs, drill anywheres, be able to filter their data, interact with their data on a time series, and also switch between different metrics in their data set. And all of these features combined really create an enjoyable user experience. So now I'll jump into a live demonstration of how these features could work. So the first one, a really simple one, is drill down. So if you have hierarchies in your data, you can drill down within that hierarchy. So you may drill down from a region to a country, and then from there you may drill down from a country to a specific location point. And as you're drilling down, you can start to see the totals on the right-hand side. You might also include KPI indicators to show that you're either meeting or not meeting your targets. The top report is a summary report which summarizes, for this example, years and regions. On the right-hand side, we can see a visual representation of the proportions of each year and region throughout our totals. So we can see Europe in 2009 was quite good, whereas Asia, North America, and Latin America performance in terms of sales weren't as high. Now, if you were curious about any of these areas, you could then click on a particular data element. It will then take us to a detailed report, which then breaks down that data. So really it starts to explain the information that we're being presented. So we can see how that total was broken down in terms of different demographics, where we have a section for each demographic. We also have conditional highlighting to highlight good and bad performance. The third type of interactivity is Drill Anywhere. So Drill Anywhere operates in a similar way to Drilldown, although you don't need to predefine a hierarchy. So you can define this hierarchy as you go and as you're using your report. So we can see our totals by different media types. We may then select to see this broken down by a particular year. And from that year, we can then select, for example, a different booking step. And this will allow the users to have flexibility in terms of what information they're looking at and how they investigate their data. The next dashboard showcases how you can incorporate filters to slice and dice your data. So you can select particular demographics, and once it refreshes the data, you start to see all the reports on the dashboard are refreshed, and we're just looking at a smaller subset of the information. Now with this, we can switch between different sub-tabs within our dashboard, so different groupings of information. So you might have your general customer information, and then you might have a more generic analysis. The final two interactive features are the time slider, so being able to look at a particular segment in time, and also your series selection. So let's say we wanted to see the last 3 years of data, but we wanted to see that for cost. So as soon as we switch to cost, all of our reports then refresh to focus in on that metric. When we switch to number of athletes, or this could be number of customers, we'll see that all of the reports are now refreshing. And what's also quite important is the colors that we're using. So for particular metrics, you may associate them with certain colors, and this will make it really easy for when you're switching between different dashboards. You know automatically by seeing the color, you can start to distinguish what each metric is and what kind of value it holds. So all of these interactive features combined start to create quite an interesting user experience, and you're free to mix and match these features across your different types of dashboards. Now, best practice number 7 is less is more and keep it simple. So try to display less reports per tab and use your sub-tabs logically to group that information. So you find if the axes and the data are clear and readable, then it may allow for at-a-glance insight, where a user can quickly look and find the information they need. Another important point is that if you're keeping your design quite simple, then this will definitely help with performance. So making sure that your dashboard is fast will definitely not deter the user when they're using the solution. This takes us to our final section on formatting and how you can really format and present your data. So first of all, when you're building a dashboard, you want to make sure that you're drawing the user's attention in the right way. So when the dashboard is opened, the key points and areas of significance should really stand out on the page. To do this, you should be using appropriate colors that would, in most cases, signify good and bad messages. So for most people, red indicates bad and green indicates good. Now this can change in different cultures, so you need to make sure that your designs match to your audience. Now, once you're using these colors, make sure you use these colors consistently across all your dashboards. So if you're using red as bad performance on one dashboard, then using it for a particular type of dimension on another dashboard may be misleading to that user. So make sure you're consistent. But to summarize this, with the help of color, the users should really be able to generate quick conclusions and identify areas of problem or potential. Now, in terms of layout and placement, there should be a logical and natural flow to the dashboard. And this will help guide the user experience. Not only should you group common reports, but also group common filters and order from the most to the least significant. So your most critical dashboards should be placed at the top, with your least critical dashboards placed below. Now, if you have filters on your dashboard, then it's always important to put your utmost highly used filters at the top with the least significant ones at the bottom. So to give you an example of how a dashboard could be laid out, you could have a grouping of KPI reports at the top, so when the user logs into the dashboard, they can see a high-level overview. You may then group some common reports that answer similar questions to the side, and you would then order your filter hierarchies. For example, if you've got products, you might have product type that then drills down to individual products. So really making sure that those hierarchies are placed in the right order will make it easy and intuitive for the user when they're using the dashboard. The positioning and the size of the dashboard should reflect on the held importance of each reporting portal. So it's been scientifically proven that people that read from left to right will scan a page from left to right, top to bottom. So make sure that your most in-demand reports are positioned at the top left. Now, in terms of screen real estate, ensure the most important pieces have a great proportion of the overall space. Because they will provide the most value, you want to make sure that they have enough space so that you can see the full display. Now, to one of the most important points, communication is the objective. So really make sure that the data is the center of attention. So the design, the layout, color choices, chart types, and metric selection, all of these features I've discussed today really combine to highlight the core importance of the data. These elements should combine to really convey the significance of the data represented in the most effective and efficient ways possible. These elements should never detract or distract from the data being represented and the message that the data is attempting to deliver to your audience. With all these pieces put together, you should be able to make a strong connection between the visualization that's provided on the dashboard and the underlying data. So to give you an example, and not a very good example of how a report should be designed, for this example you can obviously see there's a high use of color, which is quite distracting, and this would be really overwhelming to any user. It's also unclear what the chart is representing, and it doesn't communicate a clear message. So if you were looking at the report, you may see the red bars, but it's not clear because we cannot see a legend what exactly the red bars represent. Also, if you wanted to click and drill in to analyze that information, because of the data so highly condensed, you could quite easily miss the bar when trying to click on it. And this takes us to our final point around mobile and device independence. With mobile, the important questions to ask are how will it look and feel on the tablet? How will the end users then consume the data that is being presented? And once you've answered these questions, you'll need to kind of check the design is suitable for a smaller screen, first of all, and that the reports are easy to use on these devices. Once you've delivered the reports onto these devices, you have a really good feel of how they operate in areas that you can improve on. Now, in terms of publishing and creating your content, you should ideally only create the content once via your GUI, via your standard GUI, which may be through your browser, and you should be able to publish that content to any of your devices. Now that wraps up the 12 best practices. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Now I will pass you back to Ivan and he will summarize today.
Thanks for that, Cam. That was really good. So that's basically the end of our webinar. I really hope you guys got something out of this. As again, we really do all these webinars to really help you guys out and really get that business value and really return ROI to your business. So before we go, I'll probably just leave you the Stephen Field quote saying dashboard content must be organized in a way that reflects the nature of the information that we see and also supports efficient and meaningful monitoring. So again, I really, really hope that you guys have gotten out of this webinar. And again, if you want to talk to us, we have more information on these pages. So feel free to follow us on Twitter at YellowfinBI. Again, feel free to contact us on LinkedIn as well through our Yellowfin LinkedIn user group. And again, if you need more cost information or you just want to talk to someone about our product, feel free to contact us on our website at www.yellowfinbi.com. Otherwise, thanks for coming again, and hopefully we'll get to chat with you soon. Thank you.